Hi there, and good afternoon to everyone here. My name is Shannon Stott, and you are at the Self-Care During COVID-19 workshop. I want to start out by just introducing myself a little bit and leading you through some tips and tricks of how this is going to work. My name, again, is Shannon. I am your host, and I am so glad to be here in the chat on the right. If you can, go ahead and say where you're from. Let me know if you can hear me or not. I see Charlene is having a little trouble hearing, but I need to know also if the rest of you are having some trouble hearing. So on your right-hand side, there should be a box. Yes, good. Thank you, Leslie. Washington, D.C. Good job. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good. Glad to have you here from Maryland. Excellent, excellent to know that you can hear me and you are doing well. So one of the things I also want to draw your attention to, you'll see in your right-hand side, the chat and then the participants and the Q&A. If you, during this entire workshop, have some questions that you are burning to ask, please click on the Q&A portion, the Q&A button, and then you can write your questions in there. It's so nice to see you. Silver Spring, Maryland. I know that place very well. So I'm glad to have you here all the way from Tijuana. This is lovely. Yes, this is lovely. I am glad to have you all here and just being a part of this self-care during COVID program. So to get us started, I want to say these things. This self-care during COVID workshop is brought to you by the PEACES Collective. The PEACES Collective is a nonprofit organization using art, creativity, and service to help build thriving communities. This self-care during COVID-19 workshop is a part of that service. The PEACES Collective reminds us that we come from a community with a history of making things with our hands. You know this. How can we continue to do this important work as creatives if our minds are cloudy, our hearts are heavy, and our hands are tired? We can't. Today, Charlene Muhammad helps us to explore self-care techniques to clear our minds, to lift our hearts, and rejuvenate the energy that inspires us and our hands to continue to create through this time with COVID-19. Charlene Muhammad is and has been embracing the spirit of herbal medicine for over 20 years. She cultivated her practice within her family and community, nurturing her two sons with herbs since birth. Charlene's practice is predicated on a formal master's level training, as well as her own personal use of plants and food, giving her a hands-on relationship and knowledge of the successes and challenges that herbal remedies can provide. Charlene is also a childbirth doula. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that work. And certified yoga therapist, as well as a graduate of Cornell University. Charlene holds a Master of Science degree in herbal medicine from Maryland University for integrative health, and she is certified by the Board of Nutrition Specialists, and she is a licensed dietitian for the state of Maryland. Friends, family, you are in good, great, capable hands today for this workshop, and I would love you to put those hands together. Please put some welcoming words and your hands together in the chat for Charlene Muhammad.
Thank you, Shannon, for your lovely introduction. Well, welcome everyone, and I believe that we're going to bring up the PowerPoint presentation. What I'd like to do is we're going to spend some time in a dialogue. I'm going to share some information with you. Again, please write your questions in the Q&A, and then we will leave time at the end to answer those questions or to invite anybody up, and you can come on up here and ask your question live with me, okay? So let's continue on. So right now, I'd like you to look at these two reflection questions and take a moment to jot down your thoughts in the chat box. We'll look at these questions a little later on in our presentation, but if you wouldn't mind, just think about from your own experience, how do you define self-care? And how would you describe what you believe are the benefits of self-care? So let's just take a minute to have you sort of write those reflections. All right. I can't see the chat box, so we'll just move on. You can keep writing these, your reflections as we go along. Great, we can move on to the next. There we go. All right, so just as a disclaimer, I am not a doctor, nor do I take the place of your doctor. I cannot diagnose or prescribe anything. All the information I'm sharing today is based on my own experience as a clinical herbalist, certified nutrition specialist, and licensed dietitian. Okay. All right, so COVID-19 is proving to be a challenging and stressful time for the entire world. Even though we may all be in it together, we are not all experiencing the stress of uncertainty in the same way. The pandemic is exploring the depths of disparity faced by citizens of the earth in full view. The concept of self-care, a trendy practice in 2019, is absolutely vital to our survival in 2020 and beyond. And this is not going to be a conversation about spas and relaxing at a resort. This, I hope, will be a dialogue about the value of being human and our responsibility to this precious gift of life that we've all been given. Self-care is your and my commitment to the health and well-being of our body, mind, and spirit. Self-care is your and my commitment to our community. Now, how do we get to this understanding of what is self-care? Self-care is a healing art. By definition, we see that health means, let's go to the next slide. I'm sorry, I forgot to prompt you. So by definition, healing has two sort of parts to it. To heal is to restore to health or soundness. It's to set aright, to mend. To restore to the spiritual wholeness. It is to return to our health. Okay, let's move on. In psychology, healing involves reordering a person's sense of purpose in the universe, or the process of evolving one's personality towards greater and more complete wholeness. We continue on with some other definitions. And then healing has also been defined as the process of bringing together aspects of oneself, our body, mind, and spirit at deeper levels of inner knowing, leading towards an integration and balance with each aspect and having them all of equal importance and value. So our body, mind, and spirit being of equal importance and value, not focusing on one more than the other. Let's move on. Healing is from the root word, the Latin root word hal, which means holy, spiritual, pure. So in this, we can see that healing is a birthright, not a privilege for a few or a secret of some shamans or quote unquote healers. If we agree that health, that's the harmony of body, mind, and spirit, and the root of this process is hal, or to be holy, spiritually pure, then the process of healing and self-care is the search to be human. How did we lose this birthright? Have we given our power away? Has our power been taken from us? Or is it simply our ignorance, lack of knowledge that keeps us from the healing power that we have within ourselves? So in our current practice of allopathic medicine, so that's Western medicine that really has shaped our culture. And when I say practice, I'm including both the healthcare provider as well as we as the client or patient, because we're both involved in the relationship and how it has evolved. So I'm not doctor bashing here, but in this current Western allopathic practice of medicine, healing is not the aim, it's finding a cure. Okay, let's move on. So I wanted to look at this conversation about cure because we're going through all of this stuff with COVID. So we're going to look at it in relationship to COVID and just in general. When we think about a cure, it's a method or course of medical treatment for restoring health, usually using a restorative agent like a drug or a vaccine, right? And the unique difference between healing and cure is that the cure implies that there's a finite definition. So let's consider what's happening now with the quest to find a cure for the coronavirus. All of the current preventive advice that we're receiving from the CDC and the NIH, et cetera, is 1, wear a mask, 2, wash your hands, 3, social distance. The antidote or cure is predicated on finding a vaccine. And although there are dozens of vaccines in research today, the American media is discussing 3 of those. That's the one with Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca. Now, I want you to note that all 3 of these vaccines claim to disrupt the coronavirus from replicating in the body. Therefore, it lessens symptomology, right? The symptoms of the virus itself. But none of them have proven to stop the spread of the virus. It's too soon to tell at this phase or trial. Okay, so there's never been no real discussion in mainstream media on the possible benefits of strengthening the immune system through simple environmental changes, changes to our diet, and self-care strategies. Most important, we're not having any frank discussion on what caused the need for a pandemic. What is Mother Earth, our home, trying to tell us or get us to pay attention to? What self-care does the Earth need at this time? Some things to ponder as we go through. Let's move on. Self-care is healthcare. It's empowerment. It's real, measurable, psychological changes that can happen in the body. Okay? The self-care journey is to pursue these 4 main human needs: to live, to be happy, to gain a knowledge of self, and to know love. Hold on, I have a couple of more notes I wanted to talk. So during the coronavirus, we are struggling to hang on to these 4 basic needs. The psychological impact of the pandemic may further affect our immune system due to a few things. So think about this in your own body as well as in folks that you have around you and your family and the community. There's a lot of stress-induced insomnia that's happening right now. There's a lot of anxiety over the uncertainty about what's going on. There's feelings of isolation because we're being asked to social distance and to quarantine or shelter in place. And all of this is stimulating a lot of depression, particularly around the uncertainty of our financial situations, etc. But thankfully, nature provides us with some tools in her toolbox to help us along this self-care route. All right, so I will discuss some of these tools and the order in which they are designed to be practiced or implemented. Okay, so let me preface what I'm going to say here. Now, I'll outline some of the more popular of nature's tools, yet please know that every people on the planet, every culture has been given their individual medicine. We might not be close to it now because we're in this diaspora, but every people were given an individual medicine or unique relationship with nature that will help them live in harmony and in good health. There's no silver bullet per se, none of that. So I know we hear about black seed, and that seems to be the panacea that we should be using. If you're in South America, it could be Tahibo, which is Padiarco. If you're here in North America, it could be golden seal. So, but every people has their own magic remedy, okay, to support its lineage. Since we live here in the West and we're in this big melting pot, what has happened is that we sort of pile everything in. We're mixing all the different medical traditions together. And I think that can be confusing. So let's just talk about that a little bit. In this healing hierarchy that you see, this is really just based on my own reflection, experience, and study, that most healing traditions, they have a hierarchy of interventions. Most begin with a preventive strategy that has a spiritual base or foundation. And then they move up to the building blocks of life, which is diet and exercise. From there, the interventions of herbal medicine, energetics, and they're usually used for acute or chronic illness. And they don't really move up. Look where allopathic medicine, Western medicine is at the top of the pyramid. It is usually used for the most serious of illnesses. It's the point of least, the part that we use the least. And if you notice in our own practice, we have it upside down, right? Most of us jump right to Western medicine, and then we're scampering around trying to learn all the energetics and herbal medicine and stuff. But we don't want to do the basics. We don't want to pray and meditate. We don't want to eat to live, and we don't want to get off of the couch. All right. So let's look at each one of these individually. We can move on. All right. So we have to always start with the foundation, and that is prayer and meditation. First and foremost, in all traditional healing and self-care modalities, there is a process for reflection. The process for reflection is to do a self-analysis about how one is feeling and experiencing and why one might be having such an experience. It is to look for the consequences of our action. It is the law of cause and effect, and that is our nature. Prayer and meditation is the cornerstone of all faith traditions. Prayer, meditation is our personal conversation with nature and the creator of nature. Conversation, communication is vital to our own individual life experience. When we cut off that communication, it shortens our life. The easiest and quickest way to punish a criminal is to put them in solitary confinement. Hence, the feeling of isolation due to sheltering in place. It's the same sort of concept that we're going through right now. Prayer and meditations are avenues to tune into your heart and into your mind. It is the bridge to understanding who we are and where our creativity lies. Prayer and meditation is our devotion. So an example of this would be the birds singing in the morning. And if you've been tuning into nature more because of what's been happening, and I like to say, since we humans came into timeout, nature has been like, oh man, you mean we don't have to worry about roadkill? We can like hang out, and squirrels are running and all kinds of things are coming out. We have foxes in this area, bears are coming out. But, let's just look at the birds. True to their nature, regardless of it's winter, spring, summer, and fall, as soon as they're the first sight of daylight, they start singing. Okay, they communicate with the energy of nature. And all animals instinctively do this, except the majority of human beings. We've lost this connection. We take nature for granted. We waste our devotion on stuff, man-made stuff, right? And so we are sick, really, and out of tune. And then when we are sick and out of tune, what we end up doing is we look to a thing to cure us rather than going back to the devotion of our nature. That then, if we would tune in, would absolutely show us how internally we can begin our own healing processes. If you're new to this concept of prayer, then there's this wonderful prayer called the Universal Loving Kindness Prayer that you may want to explore. It has many, many parts to it. I'll just read you one part, which is at the beginning, because you start with a prayer for yourself, and then you move the prayer for your family, and then you move the prayer for your friends, and then the community, and then the world. So where I say I, just think about putting in my family, my friends, my community, the world. For yourself, you might say, may I be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to me. May I always meet with spiritual success. May I always have patience, courage, understanding, and determination to meet and overcome inevitable difficulties, problems, and failures in life. May I always rise above them with morality, integrity, forgiveness, compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom. We may say this loving kindness prayer again for your family, your friends, your community, and the world. Just begin by saying it to yourself, for yourself. Let's move on. All right, this is one of my favorite topics. If you hang around me, you know that nothing like eating to live. Diet is also one of the first steps in the traditional healing process. Before taking in any herbs, medicine, energy work, etc., diet must be addressed. What we feed ourselves is the biggest personal assault we do to our bodies. 70% of the illnesses in the world today are dietary related. I'll say that again. 70% of the illnesses in the world today are dietary related. What we eat is by far the number one source of health and illness. If we fix the diet, we will absolutely begin to fix our health. In the Western culture, we say we have a SAD diet, which is the standard American diet. And the standard American diet, which is too much salt, too many additives, right? Which all and because we're basically eating sugar, salt, and fat in our diet, in the standard American diet, it causes entirely too much inflammation in the body. I'm going to get into this a little later on. I have a tendency to jump ahead of this, but what I do want to say is that because that SAD diet does have an effect on our immune system, we must remember that the secondary underlying opportunistic infections that happen in the coronavirus happen because of, to those who have these diet-related illnesses. So if we're suffering from diabetes, from any kind of respiratory issues, from smoking or from environmental toxins, and cardiovascular disorders or obesity, okay, all of those are underlying factors. So when you hear them and they say, oh, people who have these underlying conditions, they're more susceptible to coronavirus, and there's a direct link to diet, you would think that then we would be being coached into fixing our diet so that we would, take away these possible risk factors. Food, the purpose of food is to nourish the body. We must eat first for nourishment and then for pleasure. We have it flipped. We eat for pleasure, what tastes good, and then we think about nourishment when we're sick. Okay, let's move on. That's my soapbox. All right. So here, immune health is critical during the pandemic. And this is really, really important, directly related to our diet. Let's consider some strategies for supporting digestive health. 70% of our immune system lives in our digestive system. So that makes perfect sense. So let's think about how the body is made. Now, the biggest assault we have in the body is what we put in our mouth, because we have control of that. So every time we take something in, whether you're eating or drinking, if you're chewing on a piece of gum, sucking on a mint, whatever we put in the mouth, right at the beginning of digestion, which starts with your taste buds, okay, figuring out, okay, what on earth did she put in my mouth? Is this good for me or not good for me? And so your body begins with its intelligence trying to figure out if this is something that's going to help us and heal us and nurture us, or if it's something that is toxic, okay? And so if it's something that is not good for you, like say, what's something that's really not good for us that we do, like can of Coke, okay, Coca-Cola. All right, so we eat it, we drink it, tastes good. But our body has to go through this whole process of figuring out, is this going to hurt us or is it going to be good for us? And so if it's something that's toxic, our body is so smart, it's going to get rid of it. But if we keep assaulting the body over and over again with toxic things that it's not good for, then what's going to happen is over time, we will get these immune responses happening. And then one of the big ones is inflammation, okay? So we want to make sure that we're supporting the body and that we're keeping the immune function happening optimally and not overtaxing it. And when we overtax it, then it becomes suppressed, because like anything, once you work it too much, it wears out. Therefore, good digestive health is our first line of defense against most infections, okay? Most of our digestive systems have become imbalanced because our gut flora, okay, that's the natural microbiome in our body, it gets taxed, and it's there trying to help support us in our digestive system. So one of the things we're going to do is we want to identify if we have any food sensitivities and eliminate them from your diet. So food sensitivities is also known as cross-reactivities, can cause imbalances in our body. And these are usually due to if you're eating a whole lot of refined carbohydrates. Now, all foods have carbohydrates. So when we say carbs, we're talking about refined things like bread and cake and pasta and cookies and candy and those kinds of things. But there are carbohydrates, and we do need carbohydrates. There's carbohydrates in vegetables. There's carbohydrates in other grains that we certainly do need because they also have sources of fiber and other minerals. So I'm talking about those processed type of foods. Anything that has added sugar in it, okay? And then red meat. So studies confirm that eating excessive saturated fats, they can change your gut flora, and that will compromise your immune system, which will increase the inflammatory response. Okay, let's move on. All right, so we're going to try to do a little kitchen science wisdom. And with this, I got 3 questions for us to ask every time we make a decision about what we're going to eat. Number 1, is this food or drink going to increase my energy level? Number 2, is this food or drink going to make excellent building material for my body temple? And number 3, is this food or drink going to help cure any disease I might have or prevent the disease? Okay, so ask yourself those 3 questions. And then as you're beginning to prepare your meals, this is the time we start exploring with the cooking herbs and spices. So I'm not talking necessarily about going to herbal medicine where we're drinking teas and taking capsules and tinctures and those kind of things, because herbs and spices are food, and we can add them to our meals and to our cooking in order to not only enhance the flavors, but also to support our overall health. We're going into the winter. We are in the winter, right? We're a few days away from the solstice. So we're easing the way into colder months. If we're easing our way into colder months, our diet has to change. I know a lot of us, if you're vegan or you're eating a raw diet, that's fine if that's your choice. Yet I want you to take into consider what I'm saying, and then we can talk about how you might be able to do these things. Right now, we want to eat vegetable-based diets mostly, okay? You want warm and moist food. So we're moving away from the salads. We're moving away from the cold dishes to warm and moist. We want to keep that core, those digestive fires, nice and warm, right? We don't want to have the same thing happening outside in the environment happening inside, okay? And we want to add the medicinal herbs and spices now to support our palate, which is digestion, as well as our health. And we'll get a little bit more into this later, but I'm talking about your garlics and onions and turmeric and cayenne and black pepper, all the aromatic spices. So those, your rosemary, your sage, your fennel, your thyme, anything that just has those volatile oils and those wonderful scents. They are wonderfully antimicrobial, and they really do support digestive function. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we want to eat the rainbow, all right, and that's the nature is wise too. If we would tune in and figure this out, that the color of the fruit and vegetable tells you a lot about the value of the vitamin and mineral. It's definitely the vitamin that is present in that. So when you see your reds and your oranges and your yellows, you know all of those high and purples too, all those antioxidants are in those particular products or fruits and vegetables. And then when you're looking at your greens, those are your minerals and your selenium, all of those wonderful zincs are in all of those wonderful colors as well. So during COVID-19, we're thinking about those vitamins and minerals that act as cofactors to support our digestive function, our immune system, as well as digestive function, but our immune system. And so vitamin C is one of the big ones. And we could talk about recommendations later, but vitamin C is a big one. Vitamin D, which of course is the most natural way to get it, is through sun, light. And so I encourage you to get out every day to get that vitamin D from a natural perspective. Open up your windows if you just have to do it that way. And of course, you can take a supplement of it. Most of us are deficient in some level of vitamin D. You want a vegetable-based vitamin D source, because right now, most of the synthetic vitamin D is coming from sheep lanolin. Not necessarily a bad source, but there are some natural sources that you can get it from. Quercetin is another one, and quercetin is natural in onions and capers. Another really good, strong antiviral cofactor because it helps viruses from entering into the cell. All right. And we'll look at it. I have another list of this that we'll look at a little later. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. One of the other big antioxidants that you'll hear a lot of research on is zinc. And it acts as a cofactor for many of our immune processes in our body, but it's found in a lot of foods. So you can get zinc in legumes and beans, seeds, cheese, eggs, whole grains, as well as some meats and poultry. Now, if you could choose to take a supplement of it, but don't, if you're just doing it preventively, then no more than 40 milligrams and with food, okay? Because it can be very hard on the digestive system. And if you do become sick with COVID or coronavirus, then the recommendation is 50 milligrams of zinc. But again, you want to be mindful about taking it because it stores in your fat cells and it can become toxic. It's not like vitamin C, which is a water-soluble vitamin, which means that we eliminate it every day. You would eliminate what you don't need. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier, an anti-inflammatory diet. So if we're having a lot of sugar in your diet, if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates in your diet, if you're eating something that you actually have a sensitivity to, for some of us it could be dairy, I'm just using that as an example, then you'll notice some irritation happening in your digestive system. And it can be, a low-grade irritation, or it could be a full-blown irritation. And the best thing is just to figure that and eliminate it from you. If you know that you've got some inflammation over time, you might want to think about having some fermented foods. And that's like having some vinegar or kefir. These are prebiotics. So basically the prebiotics help to build and grow the gut flora. Probiotics is like putting gut flora into your body. Okay, that's the difference. And so both strategies are good, but I'm always saying it's always better to start where your body is making its own and then you add. So if you're sick and you need to have some support, you use the probiotics as a strategy to support your health. Yet you can begin by building your own gut flora by making sure that you have some good fermented foods in your body every day. All right, we can move on. And I know this next slide that you're going to see, it's short. I mean, it's small. The writing is very small. This is just an example. But I wanted you to know that the Institute for Functional Medicine, they published a list of nutraceuticals and botanicals, those are herbs, that are recommended for COVID-19 immune support. Okay, so that's the Institute of Functional Medicine. I'll make sure that this gets in the chat when I stop chatting. And there's two other really good sources for learning about a holistic approach to the pandemic and the COVID-19. And that is the Institute for Functional Medicine, and then MedCram also, which are board certified physicians who are looking more holistically at the coronavirus and COVID and coming up with some strategies that can help us. All right, let's move on. Okay, so move it or lose it. Okay, that's my another one of my mantras. There are profound benefits to movement. Our bodies are designed to move, not to be sedentary. Movement supports our digestive function, our cardiovascular health, as well as our mental health. Movement practices such as yoga, qigong, tai chi, or some of the martial arts are designed to be reflective practices as well. And that can support our personal and spiritual growth as well as physical health. And I know that we're indoors now most of the time. You don't need much space to take a yoga class or to do some yoga. You really just need a place where you can extend your arms out to the side, right? And perhaps get on the floor or in a chair. And the body responds so quickly from just doing a very simple practice of extending the arms overhead and bringing them back down. If you give that a try, I want you to just feel what happens in your back body, what's happening in your core, what happens in your arms and your shoulders, everything, even in just sitting down, even in your thighs and your quadriceps. Everything starts to get engaged just by moving. Okay. So make sure that we're moving. Ideally, you're having some active movement 30 minutes a day, ideally. And if you can't get outside and walk, then you can walk in place in your house. If you have stairs, you walk up and down the stairs. I invite you to join our yoga classes. I do a couple of virtual yoga classes online. There's a lot of other opportunities for you to do this as well. All right, let's move on. Okay, so now let's look at some of these other, we're walking our way up that pyramid, right? So we talked about prayer and meditation. We looked at food and diet. We talked about movement. Those are the foundational ones. Okay, so even after all of these foundational steps that you've taken, you've noticed you're not feeling so great. Maybe you just have the common cold, or you're just feeling a little tired or whatever, or your spirit is dragging. And so we want some way that we can sort of uplift our spirits in some way. Now we move more into the other strategies, and we're going to start with herbal medicine. Herbal medicine is volumes and vast and large, and again, because every people on the planet has been given their own natural medicine. So you've heard of TCM, which is traditional Chinese medicine, which is a very interesting science. I don't know much about it. I have a very little bit of understanding. They work on a formula system. Most of them are using the Yellow Emperor's Book of Medicine. And they don't just use plants in those formulas. They use minerals. They'll use insects. It's a very interesting science. And it's usually practiced along with acupuncture. And acupuncturists would do both. They'll, use the needles and as well as provide one of these formulations based on what they're trying to nudge energetically in your body. I jumped over Western medicine because I want to do that last. Ayurveda is the sister science medicine to yoga. And it is a whole science. So they're not only talking about the use of herbal medicines, which they do, but there are also other lifestyle strategies. So Ayurveda really is more like a lifestyle practice of medicine than just the use of herbs. There are herbs that are used. There's certain bathing techniques that are used. There's other types of cleansing that are used, be it topically as well as internally. There's a whole practice. They have a whole meditation and mindfulness aspect of it as well. So it's a whole lifestyle type of medicine. And then Unani Tib is a Islamic faith, one of the traditional Persian Islamic faith medicines as well, found by Abyssinia. And it too is sort of predicated on the Ayurvedic tradition. So all those medicines sort of came up during the same time. Now, Western medicine, so that what we have here, Western herbal medicine in North America, I would say in Europe, as well as in like Australia, New Zealand, all those medicines are grafting together of many traditions. Here in the United States, a lot of the medicine, the Western medicines that we're following, of course, came from the indigenous people from here in North America, as well as what the enslaved folks from Africa brought over, and then some of the European traditions. So it's really a mixture of things. There are some plants that we use here that are native to North America. What I studied was Western herbal medicine because my decision to do that was I wanted to be where I could see the plants grow. I just didn't want to be in a clinical setting where I was handing out supplements to people. I really wanted to see how the plants grew, what did the soil look like, what did it feel like, taste like, all of that from seed to to tea, basically. And then there are many plants that were brought over here, so they're not indigenous to North America, but they have become a part of the North American canon of Western medicine. So there are many, many things. I wanted to say a word about nutraceuticals, which are basically vitamins and supplements. There are also many ways that you can give herbs. So in the other traditions that are listed there, TCM, Ayurveda, and Unani Tib, the usual practice is not just to give you one single, what we call a single. So they wouldn't just be taking like, oh, echinacea. Take echinacea because that's to boost your immune system. They're usually using blends of herbs because they're talking about the energetics of the plants and how they work together, how they work in harmony together, and then how they work in harmony with your body. In the West, as we're learning, and because everything is marketed, we get, you take just echinacea, right? Or you take just golden seal, right? The big thing this now has been elderberry, which are all fine. They're fine. And yet I'm going to encourage you to study some more so that you can learn about the energetics of these herbs and then bring them together. Nutraceuticals are mini medicines. So basically what a nutraceutical is a scientist who has decided what constituent of a specific plant is the medicine. They extract that, and that becomes the supplement that you take. A big one is around turmeric. Okay, so the constituents that researchers have found is curcumin, supposedly is the magic or the medicine of turmeric. And so you can, when you go to Whole Foods or wherever you buy your vitamins from, you're going to see curcumin. You may say, I want to have a supplement of turmeric. And then you go and the proprietor gives you curcumin, and you're like, what is this? I asked for turmeric. That's what it is. Okay, it's an extraction from turmeric. That's one science. But that to me is one step next to having allopathic medicine or pharmaceutical. That's why we call them nutraceuticals. For example, aspirin is a synthetic form of white willow bark, okay, which is an indigenous medicine from North America. White willow bark is an analgesic. That means a pain reliever. And it was a bark that if you had a toothache, you could just go break off a part, suck it, and it would cure, at least ease your pain. And so the constituent in white willow bark has been extracted and synthesized as aspirin. Nutraceuticals are right there. In most Western traditions of herbal medicine, what I study is that we're looking at the whole plant because it's the energy of the plant. It's not just the constituents. It's not just the chemistry of it that does all the magic. It's the whole plant itself. Yeah. And so when you think about that, think about whole plant approach, and then what plants work together. Okay, so that whose energy works well together, and then whose energies work well together that's going to work in my body and make me feel good. Okay, because what's good for me might not be good for you. All right, let's move on. You know me, I get on my soapbox and away we go. Okay, so let's do a little bit of specifics around what we can do for COVID to take care of ourselves. And the current research on COVID-19 and the coronavirus states that these viruses are not the cause or morbidity, all right? It's not the cause of the morbidity, why you feel ill or death. It's the opportunistic infections, such as acute respiratory infections, that these viruses and others open us up to that can lead to us getting really sick. So the flu does this too, not just coronavirus, and a bad, bacterial cold, common cold. They do the same thing. They're opportunistic. They come in the body, they wear down the immune system. So our defenses are down, and then other things can come in and cause us to get really sick, right? And so we're moving into the cold and flu season, and this, is an ideal time for this to happen. Now, our mucosal membrane is the first line of defense in the respiratory system. So that's what's happening in our nose, it's what's happening in our ears, and some sense in our throat, right? They have these membranes, they secrete antibodies to fight off these toxins that we might inhale and cause infection. So one idea would be to irrigate the respiratory passages to keep out any annoying pollens or other bacteria that or toxins that are circulating at this time during winter. There's a lot of mold. We've had a lot of rain, and the leaves are dry and damp, and that's mold that's happening outside. So if you're like me, when this first started, you come outside, you're like, why is my nose running? Oh my goodness, it's corona, even though I'm wearing a mask. There's other things going on. Don't panic. So one thing that you might want to try to do is daily, which is something that I do, is to use a neti pot. Okay, the neti pot is a wonderful way to irrigate the nose. It's not a lot of fun for everybody, and so you can also use these over-the-counter saline nasal sprays to do the same thing. It's just saline. What the neti pot does, it's adding a little salt, saline, into the pot of water, and I like to put a couple of drops of tea tree oil, which is an antibacterial, and then irrigate the nose. So if I've been out for a walk or something, even though I'm wearing my mask, I'm going to come in and just, do a preventive measure, or use the saline spray, which is basically the same thing. You want to gargle with salt water and a little tea tree oil, that can be very helpful. And then having a daily cup of ginger tea or fennel tea. You'll notice how that just opens all of this up, the respiratory system, and really helps to help you to breathe easier and get some soothingness to your lungs. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Another thing that I would suggest is to maintain really good oral hygiene. This is an Ayurveda tradition of oil pulling. Now, our mouths are home to a lot of common bacteria. A lot of staph, believe it or not, live in our mouth. And when they become imbalanced, it can lead to some infection. So this oil pulling practice is one that I also do every day. Now, I use coconut oil because I like the taste of coconut oil. In the traditional Ayurveda way of doing this, you would use sesame oil, okay? You can use any oil that tastes good for you because it'll all do the same thing. Put about a teaspoon of oil in your mouth, you swish it around, I say like 10 minutes. If you research this, you're gonna find some people say, do it for 30 minutes, do it for, 20 minutes. I do 10 minutes. I put it in my mouth, I take my shower, I come out, I do my oral hygiene after that. You also don't wanna spit the oil in the sink because it can clog your drain depending on what you're using. Like coconut oil, it changes its consistency based on temperature. So we don't wanna clog your pipes, spit it out in the garbage. And then you rinse your mouth 3 times and then brush and floss as you normally would do. It actually is wonderful. It helps draw any toxins out of your tongue, out of your gums. If you're having gum problems, it's also very healing in that way. All right. Someone did tell me to caution using this with if you have dental crowns. I haven't had this experience, but they said that if you do it too rigorously, it can loosen those crowns. All right, let's move on. Okay, so then we go up the chain now. So we're moving from using some of these herbal strategies, and we're moving now into the other energetics in the toolbox. And when we say energetics, we're dealing now with healing arts that work on what we call the subtle body. So if you put your arms out in front of you and to behind you, even overhead, we say that is your aura sphere. That's your sphere. That's your aura sphere. We all have it. That's where talk to the hand came from, right? So basically, get out of my space, okay? This is my space. That's where that comes from. So that's dealing with energy on that body. And what we have to begin to recognize is that if each of us has this energy field about us, and some people actually take pictures of it, interesting enough, they have these special infrared types of things so they can test your aura in that way. But we have these energy fields, and that energy can be disrupted. So you could be going through a day where you're just feeling really irritated. So we just go back a couple of months around the time of the election, the energy that was happening just all around us didn't feel so good, okay? And that just shows you that energy is real. So we're dealing with those subtle energy bodies in that specific sense. And it's also, this is a 3-dimensional body. the energetic field, that subtle body works on the fourth dimension. So there are other ways that we can tune into that. And these are with some of these other tools in our toolbox. The breathing practice called pranayama is probably one of the most easiest way to sort of tap into that. So you know that if you're irritated and you sit down, close your eyes and breathe deeply, it brings your whole system down. It changes the energy in your body. So one of the first things that you can do is to begin those deep pranayama practices in order to tap into that. We also know that it's the practice of focusing on the breath that leads us into the awareness. Those are those initial steps that bring us into a practice of meditation. Another one of the energetic practices is healing touch. Massage is one, but that's massage, even though massage deals with the third dimension body, it is also the fact that that particular massage therapist, right, they have the energy of their own selves that they're transferring to you as you are getting that massage. So we've all had good massages in some way. You're like, you know what? That did not feel so good, right? Because that person's energy might not have been what your body needed at the time. Moving back from that is the practice of Reiki. So Reiki is also an energetic practice, but it really is tuning into the exchange of energy. There's no hands-on that necessarily happens. So the Reiki master is hovering over your body and changing the energy flow, exchanging their energy, okay, with yours, and helping to manipulate or to remove any energetic blockages that you might be having. Then there's acupuncture, and acupuncture is also a wonderful practice. It's very complex. The acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, their organ systems are on an energetic perspective and not like our physiology. So when they say you go to an acupuncturist and they tell you they're working on the kidney meridian, they're not necessarily talking about the kidneys that are in your flank, okay? They're working with the meridians of your body, the energetic meridians that happen and influence certain aspects of some of the organ systems, okay? And so it's very complex. They too are looking for blockages that are happening in the energetic flow of those meridians and removing those, okay? And then we have the crystals and the gemstones, which have been used for centuries and centuries as for a lot of different reasons. All gemstones and crystals, as well as if you would go outside and just work with some general rocks that you see, even though we're calling them stones and they're quote unquote lifeless, the fact that they're a part of the earth means that they have some energetics to them. And so there have been a lot of studies around crystals and stones and their healing properties. We can use them for meditation. You can hold them and have an exchange of energy that way. Most of you know that I'm brewing teas, and so I put an energy crystal or stone inside as a way to sort of infuse with your tea. So it also is a wonderful study that you can do to learn more about the different aspects of human conditions that that are represented through that whole system. And then, of course, one of my favorites, which is aromatherapy. So when we think about our five senses, right, we have sight, taste, smell, seeing, hearing, right, and then the subconscious mind being that sixth sense that we say. One of the first senses that we tune into from birth is the sense of smell. Okay, it's a sense of taste first because we're at mama's breast if we're lucky, and we're learning. We get that wonderful mama's milk. And so we learn that there's nourishment that happens, that we're loved, that we're bonded from a sense of taste, which is why most of us eat the way we do. Anyway, I digress. But then there's aromatherapy. So then that sense of smell, which gets us familiar with our environment. And certain smells can really disrupt your mood, and certain smells can really help you to relax. And so using aromatherapy is a wonderful way to increase the relaxation response. And it's a wonderful aid to keep you to sleep. So you can have it you can use the oils themselves by putting them on your body. You can put them in a diffuser. If you don't have one, but you have some oils, you can put them into a pot on top of your stove and just let it simmer, and then it will fuse through the house. I often use it. If I feel the energy in the house is a little crazy, I'll just put something in there, and you don't even have to say anything. You just put the little aromatherapy on and watch how things just calm down. All right, let's move on to the next part of our conversation. Okay, and then remember, now we're at the top of that pyramid, okay, which is allopathic medicine. It has its place. I'm not bashing allopathic medicine at all. It certainly has its place. If I go outside and I break my arm, I don't necessarily want to wrap it in a banana leaf and hope for the best. I'm going to go to the doctors and have it fixed, okay? It has its place. Yet it should not be the first line of defense. And particularly during this time of COVID, and I'm not telling you not to go to the doctors or the hospitals or patient first, yet I'm saying let's find some ways that we can take care of ourselves at home first and foremost to keep ourselves safe. And then, of course, keep up your preventive stuff because there are many things that we can do. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we want to reduce our stress during this time. This is really key. And I know that stress is, what I want to say, it seems to be like it's talked about a lot and overrated, but it's not overrated at all because of the impact that the perceptions that we have about the life that we're living, how that impacts our health. Our physical well-being is greatly impacted by our emotional well-being. Here's a wonderful quote by Swami Satchidananda. The mind is something like a motor car. If you don't handle it properly, you will have an accident. Okay? So stress is a state of disharmony caused by perceived threat and other factors that is counteracted by multiple behavioral and psychological responses. Okay? That disrupt what we call homeostasis. So when everything is copacetic, everything is balanced, everything is chill. But based on our perception about a situation can trigger the stress response. Okay, we have these three main hormone, I want to say way stations in the body. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which we call the HPA axis, which is what triggers the stress response in the body. Okay, and so when that stress response is triggered, that means that we have a rush of adrenaline and cortisol running through our bodies. Okay, and if you have cortisol and adrenaline running 24/7 all the time, think about just running like hyper all the time, or even if it's a low grade level of stress that's happening all the time. There's a cascade effect that's happening that has influenced the immune system that can depress it, and it can get us more susceptible to being sick. Okay, chronic stress leads to increased inflammation, and it disrupts our immune function. Okay, so I have this wonderful paper here that says increasing evidence suggests that meditation and yoga practice has positive effects on the regulation of this hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. So by using meditation and yoga, it's a good way to augment that stress response. All right, let's move on to our next slide. All right, this is not my quote, but my wonderful yogi said this, and I love it, so I just co-opted it. Beware of OPE, other people's energy, right? Now, listen to this quote that was written 44 years ago, okay? Listen to it in relationship for today. During the last 100 years or so, the way of life has changed greatly throughout the world. The social system and other systems are no longer the same as they used to be in ancient times. This has brought about a dispersion of human energies at all levels. The mind of human beings has lost the point of balance and harmony in every sphere of existence. We are so engrossed in material survival that we are not aware of what has been happening to us. Within the last century or two, diseases have sprung up with new dimensions, expressions, and manifestations, and this has reached a peak in the last few decades. This was 44 years ago. Medical science has put an end to the great plagues of the past, but we are now faced with a new epidemic of stress-related disorders caused by our inability to adapt to the highly competitive pace of modern life. Modern medicine and medical science has been trying to tackle these problems in many ways, but frankly speaking, they have failed to deliver the necessary health to humankind. This is because the real problem does not lie in the body. It originates in our changing ideals and our ways of thinking and feeling. When there is a dispensation of energy, okay, a dispersion of ideals, how can you expect to experience harmony in your body and in your mind? The energy climate of today is challenging, okay, as well as polarizing us. And I know you all see this if you're watching the news at all. But this pandemic affords us with a wonderful opportunity to bring our self-practices to our families and friends. How might you begin to share your self-practice or your self-care with others? And one way that is really interesting is this is what the PEACES Collective is all about. So not only are we makers together that are sharing our crafts, but this whole idea of wisdom, wellness, and wealth is a way to start building community, yes, and to share with one another how we can take care of one another, because really we're only as good as our collective. So I say, you know, we all have a duty to self, but we have a duty to the collective. You take care of yourself so you can take care of the collective. It doesn't matter to me if I've got all of this information and I'm sitting in my little home taking care of myself and I walk outside, nobody's there. I need to know that you are well so that we can be well together. All right, let's go to our next slide. All right, here's a good one. So I like this little slide, right? And it's when you go to sleep at night, you might have a problem, right? Look how big it looks at night. But if you get a good night's sleep the next day, it's not so bad. And I actually made a little tip sheet on for sleep. And I can also make sure that everyone gets a copy of this. And I just want to just give you 3 little things here. So the goal of optimal sleep is for restoration, rejuvenation, and detoxification. Okay, that is why the body goes to rest. Okay, it needs to restore itself, needs to rejuvenate, but it's also when we detoxify. So if you are eating until 11 o'clock at night as you're binge watching on Netflix, and then you lay down, there's no way that your body can rejuvenate because it's still working. Okay, now it wanted to have the time to detoxify, but it's busy digesting food that you ate 2 minutes before you went to bed. Okay, so we don't want to eat more than 2 hours before we go to bed. Okay, that should be your cutoff point. We want to manage your sleep environment. Think about the lighting in your room. You want to remove electronic devices. I know this is tricky for most people, but our electronic devices, it keeps tricking the mind into thinking that it's daytime. Okay, so if you're looking at your screen, then it keeps thinking, your mind doesn't get through its circadian rhythm because it's still thinking, oh, well, I can hang out, it's still nighttime. So get rid of those electronic devices. Your bedroom is for sleep. Nothing else, not for television watching, not for eating in bed, not for typing on your laptop. It's for sleep. Find other places to do that. You want to regulate the temperature in your room. You know, it wants to be towards the cool side, not too hot. Now, because your body gets hot, you know, and those of us who are in our senior days as women, we know as the body heat increases, then you're going to wake up. So you want to keep it to a certain temperature where you can sleep, get a good night's sleep. The other thing is try to limit the noise. Soothing music is okay, but not, you know, blaring things or listening to lectures. And I know a lot of people use the meditation apps. Oh, that's fine, but keep it really soothing. And of course, you may be diffusing some essential oils. Establish a bedtime routine. Okay, our body's natural sleep homeostasis cycle, light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep. It takes 90 minutes to get through that cycle. Okay, and we need 5 of those cycles per night. That's 7.5 hours. So we cycle through. You'll notice this. You go into light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep, and then you're in light, maybe sleep again, fall back to deep sleep, REM sleep. That happens. It should happen 5 times during the night. Okay, so that 90 minutes each, 7.5 hours. Again, we're not going to eat. You should go to bed by 10 o'clock. I know that that's impossible for some folks. You know, I'm an early riser, so I can get there by 9. I don't, you know. But the idea is that the optimal detoxification time that happens in your body is between 10 and 2, 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. You want to be in bed in order for that to happen. You want to manage your sugar intake, eat small amounts throughout the day rather than binging all at once. Okay, because that sugar is going to give you it's going to give you a rush. Okay, so if you eat it throughout the day, then you are, you know, I also should say that sugar is brain food. So, I mean, there's some goodness to having some sugar, natural sugars, of course, because it keeps you alert and it stimulates brain function. But if you're having too much of it at night, then you're going to be wired and you're not going to go to sleep. You want to minimize rigorous activity and exercise at night. So probably not a time to go out and run a marathon, okay, or ride your Peloton or whatever you're doing. But you want to have more restorative practices that will help support your sleep, right? And then if you can't sleep, get out of your bed. Your bed is for sleeping. Get out of the bed, go read, have a warm glass of milk with some turmeric and cinnamon in it, and then try to come back to bed. But don't associate your bed with a place that you don't sleep. And then there's also some supplements you can take if you're interested in that can support your sleep. The first thing I would say is check out your magnesium levels, you know, to make sure that you have a valid amount of that before you move on to some of the other ones. A good cup of chamomile tea is wonderful. All right. Let's see. Let's go on to, I think we have 2 more slides here. All right. So here is just my caveat for some practical advice. Contrary to the self-made wellness experts advocating different health strategies on social media, a pandemic is not the time to get innovative with your health protocols, okay? It's not the time to wean yourself off your medications for some kind of herbal silver bullet or detox regimen. If you are on medication and you have not been following the nutrition or other health strategies to heal your chronic illness, stay on your medication. Take them consistently as prescribed, and now begin to add those restrictions to your diet and otherwise that you should have been doing at the beginning of your diagnosis. So start your strategies, but don't think that, okay, I'm going to just come off this stuff. I don't want to take it. Not a very good idea. Okay. You have to, there's a process for weaning ourselves off of pharmaceuticals. If you do get sick, do we starve a fever? No. Unfortunately, in this Western culture, our bodies are not strong enough now to ride out a fever. Okay, fevers are a natural function of the immune system. It's a powerful way that they heat up the body to burn off whatever toxins or viruses or bacteria that are in there. Okay, and it does make you feel lethargic and weak, and you can lose your appetite as well as the need to hydrate. So the fevers that you get with coronavirus, I'm told, is such, are pretty powerful. And so they're not something that you just want to try to ride out. Okay, the rule of thumb now is to take Tylenol, and yes, it's going to mask the fever symptoms, but that's fine, because then you can do the self-care things. You'll have the energy to do those self-care things you need to do to get better. Okay. All righty. We can move on here. Okay, so I'm encouraging you now to think about developing a ritual to your self-care. You are going to start with the foundation of finding some self-study for yourself, and you can, I call that prayer and meditation. You may have another way of doing it, that's fine, but you want to get to understand, who am I and why am I here? That's the first and most important thing to do. Then you're going to work on your diet, check it out, make small changes. It can be very overwhelming if you have been eating in a certain way the whole time. Start with one thing. Make one change for 30 days. It takes 30 days to break a habit, not 29, not 27, 30 consecutive days breaks a habit or starts a new habit. Okay. So you're going to try something for that and then move on to the next thing. Try not to be drastic with it. If you sit and say, okay, from now on, I'm not going to have any more meat in my diet, and you eat meat for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a snack, that's not going to work for you. You're going to feel like you're punishing yourself at some point, and then you'll fall off the wagon. So start with one thing. Excuse me. The other thing is, we're going to add some more movement to the body. So if you haven't been moving, find a ritual where you can do that every day. Okay. 30 minutes a day is wonderful. And again, if you're working from home or you're just hustling, whatever you're doing, driving your car, wherever you're working in, in a warehouse, take a moment to just give your body a big stretch and just allow your muscles to have some oxygen. When we move the body, then we get oxygenated. Okay. I wanted to deal with our own attitudes about things. So really look at how you're feeling. Do a mental health check on yourself, your stress level, your anxiety, and know that that don't feel like you don't that's you have to hide that or not need to discuss it. This is a very trying time. We're being challenged beyond conception. If I hear the word unprecedented one more time, I lose my mind. Yes, it is an unprecedented time. Yet I think that if you can tune into, again, with your self-study, meditation, and prayer, what's happening in this cycle of our evolution in the planet and the fact that we're going through a big evolutionary change, that may be able to help you to ride out some of those anxieties and fortify you to feel more resilient in this time of need. Okay. All right. I think I went all the way around my circle. So let's open this up. Let's see if we have any reflection questions, anything in the chat, and or anyone can, and someone will help me. Yes. Thank you, Shannon. Raise our hands or do whatever we need to do.
Yes.
And I lost the chat, so I can't see it. I pushed a little button here. This is my first time using Remo. So
no worries at all. This is what I'm here for, Charlene. Let's start out and just give Charlene a round of applause and thanks and gratitude for being here. And I'm going to go directly into the Q&A and just tell you what are some of the questions.
okay.
One of my favorite questions was, I love crystals and aromatherapy. Can you share a bit more about the benefits of crystals and aromatherapy on focus?
Okay, well, certainly. So with the crystals and the gemstones, again, each one of those, they have a certain energy that we can resonate with on a emotional and spiritual level, but also there's supposedly some physical benefits as well. And so when you're, depending on what you're trying to do in your own focus and attitude, you would choose a stone that fits that energetic with you, or a crystal that fits that particular energetic with you. And then there are different ways that they're used. Some it's carrying them. Some it's wearing them on the body in a particular area. Some are used almost like prayer beads, and so they're rubbed. So it really does depend on what you're striving to do with those. With aromatherapy, you're looking for aromatic scents that are going to affect your mood, okay, in certain ways. So again, they also, there are some that can help you to focus, meaning they're going to clear your mind as well as calm your mind down. So when I'm thinking about if I need focus because I want to study or read a paper. I'm going to move to something like rosemary, okay, which is an herb, yet it also is an aromatic. And so it is one that is often used in herbal traditions to help to support becoming more focused in your mind, because it sort of clears you and it draws your attention in like this. Mm-hmm.
I'm interested. I want to keep on this sort of different types of therapy. So this next question is, what are the effects of light therapy?
Oh, well, we want to make sure you're using the correct sort of light, okay? Because the importance of light therapy really is about simulating, almost like simulating sunlight, okay? And so a lot of folks who are very sensitive to a lack of light can come into these darker winter periods, and actually it can change their mood and make them a little depressed, right? So the idea of having light therapy is to assure that you're getting a certain amount of that sunlight experience, okay? That is, almost like simulating vitamin D experience in the body. So, but you want to use the right kind of light. You don't just want to turn, there are certain types of blue lights and ultraviolet lights that are used specifically for this purpose. And I don't know enough about that to say what I would recommend for you, but I do know that you don't want to be under just a regular lamp, so to speak. Right. Okay. And then then also with light therapy, depending on the practitioner you're going with, there should be some assessments done to figure out how much time you specific that's going to be beneficial to you, okay, in order to be beneficial to the mood that you're trying to work with on your body. But it's an ideal thing if you're suffering from, if you have seasonal flu, the seasonal blues because of a lack of light, it certainly can be very, very beneficial.
Excellent. You are touching on this next question, so I'm going to ask it. And while I'm asking it, if there are people in the chat, put in the chat if you would like to come up and talk and speak to Charlene and ask your question. She would love to answer it one-on-one. This next question is, you're on the path of answering it. I go outside a lot, yet my doctor has me take 2,000, 20,000 daily of vitamin D. What is the effect of lack of vitamin D, and what should I expect to see what should I expect to see if I am not taking it?
Okay, so most of us in the West are suffering from a vitamin D deficiency. That's been the latest sort of mineral that has been noticed that's been lacking in our bodies. Vitamin D is a cofactor for immune function. Okay, and they're doing a lot of studies right now directly relating how deficiency in vitamin C is suppressing the immune system, and so therefore folks with suppressed immune systems are more susceptible to the opportunistic infections that may happen when you get COVID. So yes, you may go out every day, but part of the issue that we have is that unless you're living in a wide open space with clean environment, so that there's, our ozone level is really clean, and you're out a good 4 to 6 hours a day in the sunlight, you're not getting the vitamin D. None of us are getting the vitamin D that's needed. Most of us, our vitamin D deficiency has been based on our diet and the fact that we're in buildings or in cars the majority of the day. Okay, so do get outside. I'm not saying that that's not beneficial. All of us need to get outside for many different reasons. And so during this COVID time, there's two ways you can be supplement with vitamin D. If you're really deficient, your healthcare provider may give you a prescription for vitamin D, and that's anything from 50,000 IUs, which you cannot buy over the counter. Okay. So if you're really deficient, then they're going to knock it hard in order to bring that up so that your immune system you don't get too compromised. 2 to 3,000 IUs is pretty standard of what folks are saying to take, even preventively during COVID. And so I would say that you might not even, part of the issue with vitamin D deficiency is that unless you're really lethargic or other things are going on in your body, you might not know that you are deficient. And it usually doesn't happen until you've had that you've gone and had your blood work done and it shows there. So you might not feel it. You might not think anything is different unless you get sick. Okay. And then your immune system is more suppressed. So I would say take it. I take 2,000 IUs a day, preventively. And I just think it's just really good practice. Yeah.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
We're still, if people would like to come up, please put me or yes in the chat and we'll bring you right up. You are going to have to help me, Charlene, with this next question. So I have 2 questions on moringa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
Or a fruit.
And this one question is, can you comment on moringa? Most people I see who were taking it developed health issues from taking it, like leg problems. And then the other question is, I have a cookbook using moringa, the Melanin Kitchen, Milan Kitchen. Recipes feature moringa. Is it safe to eat?
You have to figure the source. Okay. So if someone is developing, for those who are developing and high lead type of things, the issue is that if that particular fruit has been or plant has been contaminated, okay, it could be cross-contamination or it could be contaminated from the soil that it's grown in. So you have to consider the source of where you're purchasing your particular product from. Really, that's with all herbs across the board. There are even been some studies now about brown rice having a lot of toxins in them, and arsenic, because they're grown in rice patches that high in arsenic. So we know that the poor earth is really suffering from the amount of environmental toxins that are happening now. And you must really consider the source of where you're purchasing things from. Okay. So the cookbook, I would say check the source of where you're purchasing things from. And unfortunately, things like moringa, you can really only find at the more international markets. And so where they're bringing them in from international markets, if you were to try to purchase one from Whole Paycheck, Whole Foods, it's going to cost you probably 3 times the amount of money than if you were to go into an international market. But you want to really consider the source of where you're buying your supplements.
So this is, I love you're anticipating the questions, it feels like. But this idea of considering the source leads me into this question. Should we seek healing based on our lineage or our current environment?
Both. Both. So we want to seek our lineage because that is the root and essence of where we come from. Okay. We want to deal with where we are now because that's how this environment has affected us in a certain way. So does that make sense? So we want to deal with the effects of living in this environment has done, which you might not find if you go back to your lineage and it wasn't like that. And you go, okay, well, let me just do what we did in the past that was good for our ancestors. But our ancestors weren't living in the condition of this environment today. You might not be successful. So you want to deal with this current situation, but then do your study about what was happening in your lineage. Okay, so that you can eventually, this is going to fortify you. Lineage is going to fortify us and keep us resilient and move us forward. Where we're happening now, we got to get all this stuff cleaned up. So it really takes both approaches.
And then as approaches go, I have 2 questions. Both are, do you practice Reiki and do you offer Reiki?
I don't know. But I do know some Reiki practitioners if someone's interested, for sure. Yeah.
No worries. We are going to have some time where we go back to the conference hall and you'll be able to talk to Charlene one-on-one if you have extra questions. For now, on this, you don't offer Reiki, but do you have any books? This is a question here. Do you have any books or materials, specifically books that are out that people can purchase or have?
Well, I do. I have a book that is really a compilation from a series of workshops that I did called Healthy Weight, Healthy You. And it's a mind-body connection to weight loss. And then on my website, there is a host of tip sheets, research papers, videos, all other stuff. I have a lot of resources there that folks can go on and to see.
Excellent. Excellent. Will you just say your book title one more time?
Healthy Weight, Healthy You, the mind-body connection to weight loss.
There you go. What is the value taken in the immune system when one uses black elderberry? When should I add black elderberry to my body, and what are the effects of it?
So elderberry is high in vitamin C, antioxidants. The quercetin, vitamin C, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful antioxidant. It has gotten a lot of press because it was one of the first supplements that was sort of studied around in alignment with COVID and the flu. Let me back up. So most of the research about elderberry is that it has been beneficial in augmenting, or I should say that, eliminating flu symptoms. Okay, so that's where most of the research has been about. And so because coronavirus is sort of like the flu, the way that it approaches the respiratory system, they've been trying to do this correlation between the use of elderberry with coronavirus. It's too new in this virus to know what's going to work and not work. But elderberry is a wonderful herbal supplement for that. I would say if you can afford it, because that was the other thing. As soon as the coronavirus hit, the pandemic hit, you used to be able to buy 12 ounces of elderberry for $10, $12. Now it's like 30. So yeah, crazy. So if you can afford it, then I would say I would use elderberry. Again, if you can afford it, then I would take a tablespoon every day if you could afford it. If not, purchase it. And then at the first sign of a cold, then you start taking it. Okay. At that first little, wait a minute, might feel a little sniffle or something, then you start taking it. Okay. There are many things in the herbal medicine cabinet that are just as effective as elderberry. It just got a lot of press. Just like echinacea did back in the day. Okay. But there are many, many things that you can take.
You were talking about the things that we can take. And you said that all people were given something by nature for their health. What are some things given to African people?
Oh my goodness. Black seed, depending on what part of the country you were, or part of the continent that you were on. Nettles is another one. If you're up more in the northeastern part of the continent, it's things like holy basil, which is Tulsi. My goodness. Lots.
Yeah, it sounds like there are lots.
There's a lot. So I would say, again, so when we say African, because Africa is a continent of many countries and many people. And so do your research, figure out where your lineage comes from and begin that study there to see what works best for you. Yeah, because the African materia medica is profound. And interesting enough, a lot of the traditional medicines that are here were either brought here by enslaved people, or because when we were brought here as enslaved people, we were not thriving well. The next time things were brought over, those medicines were brought with it. We also have to remember that as enslaved people, when we were brought over here, we weren't just running around in the jungles doing nothing. Okay. That was a big brain drain that was brought out of that continent. So doctors were brought here, midwives were brought here, architectures, agriculturists were brought here, farmers were brought here, so a lot of what is already what makes up the Americas, the influences of those medicines were from Africa. So you can start your study here and work your way back. Both ways. You got to do it both ways. Mm-hmm.
You were talking a little earlier, you've been talking this whole time really about obviously COVID and what we're doing to help ourselves keep healthy. And I have a question here. Is there something called COVID-19 stress? A friend of mine talks constantly about how she is annoyed with wearing masks.
Absolutely. So the subtle things about, so it's a few things. When we think about what the strategies are, wear a mask, wash your hands, not so much that one, and social distance, but wear a mask and social distance are two strategies that are most offensive to people because we're being told what to do. Okay. And we're being told to restrict ourselves in a certain way. Okay. Now, wearing a mask, having to have your nose and face covered is very disconcerting because basically you are cutting off two of your senses, right? Or restricting two of your senses. And so until you practice wearing them for a while, it can be very disconcerting. Yeah, because of, we're this sixth sensory being, and you're just compromising two of them. Okay. So just from a physiological perspective, it's that. I had another healer tell me that, everybody who's been fussing about having to wear the mask and they're going to feel like they're their CO2 asphyxiated, because they're re-inhaling their own carbon dioxide. When you have a panic attack, okay, or when you are hyperventilating, you breathe into a bag, right? To do just that, to re-inhale. So it's the same concept. So really, it's not working against you. If you just relax enough into it, it will give you that same effect. But the COVID-19 stress is basically predicated on the uncertainty of how people are feeling and whether they can articulate that or not. There is a great unknown that we just walked into. There is no end to the pandemic. Okay? We don't know what the end. We don't even know what COVID-19 is yet. It hasn't finished replicating, changing, affecting whatever it's going to do. We're still at the very beginning of the process of a pandemic. And so that is uncertain. I have no crystal ball. I have no idea how long this is going to take. Our way of life we are in the major transition of a way of life. And I think that is the first thing we have to really embrace and accept. Okay. If we accept that this is a change of life, then we can be a part of the change to make it better. But if we're resisting it because we want to go back to the way it was, well, it wasn't so great in the first place. It wasn't so great back there. No, not for most of us, right? So, we have to accept the fact that things are not going to be the way that they are. So we can tune in to how it is. So as Black people, let's just think about being enslaved here. We are resilient people. We are resilient. We are still here. Okay. And perhaps the pandemic is a time where we have to tune back in to that resiliency to keep us going. Absolutely. Yes, there absolutely is a stress. And just to understand, that there's a lot of different reasons. I'm restricted. You tell me what to do. I'm feeling restricted. I want things the way it was. I'm impatient, like most of us are.
This is good. It's important to hear the idea of not resisting a change in a way of life. We are coming to the end. I'm going to ask a couple more questions. There are a lot, Charlene, of questions about different types of oils. I'm going to see if I can get to some other questions,
Okay.
and if there's time, people can ask you on the floor
Okay.
about different types of oils.
Okay.
But here are some. I think that they're easy questions. I'm not sure, so I'm going to pass them to you. Which is better for your house, an air purifier or a humidifier?
It depends on what's happening in your house. So if you have a lot of mold, it may be a purifier. If it's very dry in your house, then it would be a humidifier. They do different things. Humidifier adds more humidity. It adds more, makes more moisture in the air. And the purifier is going to remove any particular toxins, molds, and those kinds. So it depends on what's happening in your house. If it smells damp, you just can't put your foot on it, then there might be some underlying mold somewhere. And so then you want a purifier. Okay, but if it feels really dry all the time, I remember when I lived in Brooklyn and we had those steam radiator heats, it was so dry in there all the time. Then you need that would cause for a humidifier.
Okay. All right. So I am going to do two more. I feel like these two are important. One, is there a list of reference materials that recommends quality vitamin nutrients by brand names? What are some brands that you recommend?
I don't know of a list that that there's one that's out there that you can find. I will say this, and I mean I don't sell supplements. I don't have stock in anything. How about I give you some tips on how you can choose? That's my best way to do this. You want to, when you get on the manufacturer's website, they're going to tell you, they should be able to provide you with some research on how they came up with their supplementation. They should tell you where the source of their materials came from as well. And they're going to give you a list of other ingredients that are in there. Okay. You want to look for a food grade supplement at all times. So that means, if I'm looking at a multivitamin and I look at those ingredients and it says vitamin A, vitamin C, etc. On the bottom of the ingredients, they're going to tell you vitamin A from carrots, okay? That this is from carrots, oranges, pineapples, okay, wherever they're getting their sources from. So again, they have some research, they have a website, they have some research, they're going to tell you where they're sourcing their materials from, and they're going to, and other ingredients in there, and they're going to be predominantly food grade and based. Okay, there's some that I like, but since we're recording, I'm not going to shout them out.
Good choice.
I will say that website that I told you of functional medicine, that list will give you a list of research being done on specific supplements right now in relationship to COVID. So right now there's a lot of research, of course, that's going on around vaccines, but then there's a whole bunch of research that's going on about supplementation, natural strategies. And we have to remember that you're not just going to get a bout. Most people don't just get a bout of coronavirus. This thing lasts a long time. A couple of folks that I know have had COVID, 6 months in, they're still just now feeling better after 6 months. Okay. So depending on where the weaknesses are in your own body, and you might not know that, but you don't want to get COVID to figure it out, right? You don't want to get coronavirus to figure out where am I weak, because that's how it's showing up with folks that just didn't know. And then all of a sudden, what do you mean I can't walk after having this condition? Right. So you want to, if you're really interested in that, then you can follow some of the research that is happening from a functional medicine perspective.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Charlene.
Thank you.
It is, if you loved this workshop, just thank Charlene in the chat. Give her a round of applause. I am definitely taking away from this, eating the rainbow, the idea that everyone was so into, oh my goodness, the standard American diet, sad,
Mhm. Mhm.
thought provoking, and just remembering the five senses and how feeding those five senses can energize us.
Mhm.
Uh, I want to say now that this workshop today has been brought to you by Pieces Collective.
Mhm.
Ikrama Muhammad was or has always been committed to building strong and vibrant communities. And after working decades into the corporate arena, she transitioned from corporate offices and business trips to sewing rooms and craft markets. The Pieces Collective embodies her mission to create sustainable markets and systems for handcrafted goods. The Pieces Collective believes that all things have value, and when united for a useful, productive, and peaceful purpose, they have even more value. Through this workshop today, we have definitely been united for a peaceful purpose. Thank you so much, Charlene. Please show your thanks in the chat and join me in welcoming Ikrama Muhammad to tell us more about the Pieces Collective.
Greetings, greetings, and clap it up for Sister Charlene, who gave us that wonderful wealth of information, as she always does. I want to thank Sister Charlene for being so generous with her time and with sharing with us that information. She is always willing to give of herself and of her time. So Sister Charlene is not only a wealth of information and a wonderful health practitioner, she's also one of our makers. And you can find her teas that are very special. And maybe when you're talking to her at the tables, you can ask her about her teas. You can find her teas and her book at thepiecescollective.org. And just briefly, the piecescollective.org is a group of makers who came together to build a platform to share their goods with the community. But not only wanted to make beautiful handcrafted items like jewelry, bags, soaps, things of that nature, but also wanted to contribute to the community. So we have agreed to give a portion of our proceeds to the Pieces Collective so that we can do things like put on the Wisdom, Wellness, and Wealth workshops, as well as some other programs that you can find at our website. The purpose of the Wisdom, Wellness, and Wealth is, as Charlene was saying, and as we all know, these are very challenging times, and we need to unite. We need to go back to some basic things. And with the Wisdom, Wellness, and Wealth workshops, we can reach into the vast resources and brilliance that is in our midst, like Sister Charlene, and have them come to you and share the information that she has shared. And hopefully you will find some benefit in that for yourselves and that you can share it with other people. So hopefully we'd like to invite you to go to the piecescollective.org so that you can help us continue in this effort. Every sale helps in the development of community services. And we are not done with the Wisdom, Wellness, and Wealth series for this period of time. We have another one coming up this Thursday, December 10th, and that's Miss Sophia Casey, Coach Sophia Casey, who's an international speaker and author, and she is going to be leading the Fierce Vulnerability Summit, which is real talk about sisterhood. And so I know we will all be excited to come and hear that. So that's Thursday, December 10th from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Then on Saturday, we have Mr. Morgan, who is the owner and president of Get Motivated University. And he's going to lead a dialogue called A Brand New You, Creating an Impactful Brand Message. And that is, again, Saturday from 2 to 3. We have on Tuesday, December 15th, we have Move Black. And this is Black communities and land ownership as a means to economic power. And you may have heard a lot about a lot of the programs that are going on to build Black communities. And we're going to have a panel of developers and land historians come on and speak about those issues. And that's Tuesday, December 15th from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And finally, we're going to sum it all up on Friday, December 18th with our Sisters Night Out. We will be bringing more details to you on that, but please mark your calendars because that's going to be a fun, relaxed night for everybody to come and just socialize and have a good time. So again, I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank Sister Charlene. I want to thank Yinka and Shannon with the Triple Pocket events for making this easy for us. I know some of you may have had some problems in the beginning, but I'm sure whatever that we experienced, it was well worth it when we got on and was able to hear what Charlene had to offer. And I also, on a personal note, I just want to thank my sister Karen Freeman, who is our Director of Operations, and she has been working tirelessly to help get this website up off the ground. If you go to our website, she'll tell you she helps keep things running. And as they say, she ain't never lied. She has helped to keep this running, and I'm really, really grateful to her. So thank you, Karen. And I wish we had an applause track for everybody, and particularly for Sister Charlene and the great job she did. But we'll see you hopefully again at the next Wisdom, Wellness, and Wealth workshop. Until then, peace and love.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I hope that you will continue to digest all that your mind has ingested today and use the good work of Charlene Muhammad to help fuel your creative minds and center your creative hearts. For now, we will return to the conference room where I hope you will share all that you have learned with each other. Thank you to Charlene Muhammad for this wonderful workshop. Thank you to Ikrama Muhammad for gathering us together. And thank you, of course, to the PEACES Collective. And thank you all for joining us today. Be well.